Hello students, this is your week 6 lab how-to video. It'll run through kind of how to use the gizmo in order to complete this lab. Now as you can see, I've already logged into Explore Learning and I have found the gizmo. It should be under the chemistry tab and you want to look for nuclear reactions. Once you find the gizmo, you'll hit launch gizmo. You do not need any of the other materials for this. Now when you get into this, you'll notice I start with nuclear fusion and it's actually labeled proton-proton. So when you want to do nuclear fusion, you have to make sure you're in the proton-proton reaction choice. There's also a fission choice that you will also use, and then that changes up the options for you. Now when you are in the proton-proton reaction to do nuclear fusion, you want to make sure you're paying attention to the key. You have purple spheres that are protons, like a white-gray that's neutrons. Blue is electrons, red are positrons, and then the orange squiggly line is a gamma ray. When you do this piece of the assignment, you're going to be asked to write equations. And in order to do that, you need to select this write equation piece here. And that'll upload this where you can actually click into these options here in order to type in any given information that you want to use. And this is going to go off of whatever you type in order to put your symbols here. So you want to make sure that when you're doing this, you're using the worksheet and the information that it gives you in order to put this in correctly. So for example, if I go back to the lab and I scroll up to the key, these are the different types of subatomic particles or pieces that can be given off and how you would write them in. The symbols that are here will only pop up if you put the correct numbers in the upper and lower boxes. So that's what you have to pay attention to. Make sure you look to see if there's a negative in front of any of these values too, because that's how you're going to get an electron versus a positron. So use this key to help you with that. Once you get your equation predicted, that's when you're going to actually go through this process. You want to make sure you're following the reaction here. So for this case, I have a hydrogen 1, and I can tell just by this proton. And in order to do anything with that, I have to fire a proton. So you have to follow the steps. Let's say if I were to fire a neutron instead. I am not going to get anywhere with that. So you have to follow the steps in order for anything to happen. So now I went through this process and I now have a hydrogen 2 based on what I'm looking at here. And the next step would require me to fire another proton. So if I hit next and let's say I didn't listen and I fired a neutron, it's not going to do anything. So you have to make sure you're firing what you need to following the steps. And then once certain situations happen, you'll notice that down here, when I did that very first piece and I fired that proton, it'll give you an energy value. And you want to make sure you write that down for the second part of the lab. You can do that as you go through this, or you can do it separate. It's entirely up to you, but that's going to be where you find your energy information. And then again, if you want to reset anything, you just hit reset. Next, if we go to fission, this will go through the same process. We've learned about fission in week 5, and you know that it involves neutrons. So similar to the previous piece, if I were to fire a proton, nothing's going to happen. You have to follow the steps in order for this to go through and make sense. And then with fission, we're going to focus more on the energy given off, which again will pop up down here when that's done. So that's how you're going to use this lab. You do want to take quite a few screenshots while you're doing this lab. And if you want to use the gizmo screenshot option, you are more than welcome to. And I'll go through that step again. If you click on this tools option and it says screenshot, if you click on that, it'll take a screenshot of your entire screen. So whether you're writing out your equations on the fusion or the proton-proton reaction, or you just want to take a screenshot for fission, depending on what you need, you are more than welcome to do that. But just note that when it asks you to take screenshots, you have quite a few that you're going to need to take. So make sure you're following those directions and paying attention when a screenshot is asked for. If you want to meet with me and collaborate to go over this with me, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, go ahead and get started and then email me with any questions that you might have.